Here now is Steve Forbes, Forbes Media Chairman Carol Roth, a former investment banker and entrepreneur, and Jonathan Hoenig from CapitalistPig Hedge Fund. He is also a Fox News contributor. So, Steve, the market likes the jobs numbers. Do you?
Yes. What I was encouraged by, David, was that the so-called household survey, which better reflects what small businesses are doing over time, had a nice boost after a couple of disappointing months. I hope that continues.
Carol, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade, but the wages we're not growing as much as a lot of us would like.
No, we still have, despite a nice, strong number, we still have the problem that we're not seeing that wage inflation. And I personally think that this has to do with the fact that there remains a big skills gap in this country. There is a mismatch between who is trying to hire people and the skills that those workers have to be hired. And so until we come up with a framework to solve that problem, we may not see substantial wage growth for quite some time, David.
All right. Well, and Jonathan, that is one of the problems, is that new entries to the workforce still have a long way to go, right?
Well, and certainly when you start raising the minimum wage, as being done in many municipalities around the country, David, getting into the workforce is even more difficult. And I don't want to rain on the parade of what were some very good numbers, as you pointed out, but why isn't the market showing the leadership, David, it needs to? You pointed out a higher close for stocks today, but, you know, the breadth is starting to turn negative. More stocks are doing poorly that are doing better, even in terms of today's action. So those stocks are moving higher. You're starting to see some weakening, almost like the car's running out of gas. We're going to have to see where the leadership goes.
It does feel that way, but Steve,
continue.
I love it when the market goes up as a result of good jobs numbers. That seems that, to me, everybody rowing in the right direction, you know?
Well, the economy is showing a little greater growth, David, but all is going to depend, as we've discussed before, on whether they get a good pro-growth tax bill through the Congress this year and make it effective as soon as possible. If they don't do that, then you're going to start to see weakening again, which is why small-cap stocks have been under pressure in recent months.
But, Carol, it's what we don't have right now. We don't have a president that is anti-business. We don't have a president who's coming out with a brand-new regulation or a brand-new restriction on the energy sector or whatever. I mean, that's what we would have had if Hillary Clinton was president. That's what we had when Barack Obama was president.
Absolutely, and I think that is what has caused the optimism to lift the markets to the levels that they're at. I mean, if you look at it on a valuation basis, there is that expectation for continued growth. If we were going to have rising taxes, if we were going to have more regulation, we wouldn't be in the scenario that we're in today. However, that being said, we shouldn't be sending a signal to Congress that means that you can rest on your laurels. It just gives you that opportunity to continue to do those things to meet the expectations so that optimism can be fulfilled in terms of action.
All right, a plan B for health care reform. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is reworking the Senate bill, but is open to another option, saying, quote, if my side is unable to agree on an adequate replacement, then some kind of action with regard to the private health insurance market must occur. No action is not an alternative. Steve, what does that mean? Decode that for us.
Sounds like it came out of the Kremlin.
Yeah.
But what I think he was trying to say, whoever the staffer wrote that was trying to say, says something about our education system, is that if they don't get a big bill through, they got to do something to shore up the insurance markets so that people don't have skyrocketing bills coming up, you know, 30, 40, 50%. They got to make that go down, because if they don't, they're going to get the blame, not the Democrats. So they'll do short-term subsidies, whatever, even though conservatives will gag. They don't want more sticker shock in the insurance market.
I mean, Carol, that just sounds like a transfer of your and my taxpayer dollars to insurance companies. That's no good.
I know that you and I are not happy about this, Melissa, but I do think we need to take somewhat of a practical approach here. It does not seem that Congress is able to do the things that you and I think are completely common sense. I do think that if something has to be done, we have to make sure that everybody retains that coverage. But as I said before, it has to equal care and good care. I know a lot of people, including small business owners, people who work really hard, who have skyrocketing premiums, and that is not actually leading to coverage for them. They go to the doctor and they find out that they're not actually even getting any coverage, so they have to pay more out of pocket, and that is going to just put a drag on our economy. So we do need to shore that up as quickly as possible.
Jonathan.
Well, the GOP, they're ushering in single-payer care, Melissa. This is exactly what they're doing. They've given in to the premise that you have a right to health care in this country. So they're not talking about repeal and replacing, as they talked about for the better part of 7 years. Now they're simply going to take her around with Obamacare. So, you know, 8 years ago, the issue was about getting government out of health care. Now the GOP is debating how to make government better work within health care. That's a problem long term.
That was a nice cameo for David.
Well, I think I'm going to stick with the profile here. I like that profile. Anyway, will taxes be easier than health care with all this business that we've been dealing with in politics? Billionaire investor Mark Mobius says he has very high hopes for tax reform. Take a listen.
I don't think health reform is going to come easy. It may not happen. But I think the tax reform will take place before the end of the year. I believe that's something that is quite possible.
They want to lower taxes regardless.
Exactly.
And do you think that moves the needle on economic growth, tax
Definitely.
cuts?
It has a big... That combined the reduction of bureaucracy and impediments to growth within the small and medium sector is very important.
Steve, from his lips to God's ears, right?
Absolutely, David. And I think, though, the Republicans do realize that if they don't get a big tax cut through, they're going to be in very, very bad shape next year. What I think is actually going to end up happening, despite all this happy talk now, is that instead of comprehensive tax reform, they're going to discover they're going to have to go with what Reagan did with 35 years ago, across-the-board cuts in income tax rates, and leave the massive tax reform for the future. They got to get something done, and the clock is running out.
Well, Jonathan, that wouldn't be such a bad thing. As I remember, I think it was 1984. It was either 84 or 85 when we had, Steve would remember, when we had that 7 or 8% growth as a result. Wasn't it 8%, Steve?
It was over 7%, and then the Federal Reserve started to get nervous because they thought they were growing.
So, Jonathan, that was with the minor tax cut. We had a 7% growth rate, so that could really help.
Well, but some major deregulation, to Steve's point, in terms of loosening up this economy. I mean, I guess from our practitioners' perspective, David, from us here on the ground just trying to earn money, I think the sense is, look, you've got the presidency, you've got both houses of Congress. Impress us. Do something. Wow us with the tax cut. Now is the time. If Republicans ever want to actually be remembered for cutting taxes, now is the time. Don't disappoint us.
And Carol, don't get bogged down with that CBO statistic that is based on a static analysis that never coincides with reality.
No, the forecasters in terms of economics are about as good as the forecasters in terms of weather. And I have to tell you, David, for people like Jonathan and I that live in Illinois that just saw our tax rates go up to almost 5% in the state, we need some help to offset that. Yeah. I think strategically we have an amazing opportunity for them to put tax reform first. Yeah. Even if they break it up, get a win on the board, it will increase momentum and it will help them get other things
Carol,
done.
I got to tell you, I'm from New York. Steve is from New Jersey. We need help, too. It's not only you folks in Illinois, believe us.